I've always been fascinated with the Red Faction series, with how it seems to always follow a cycle of death and rebirth. The first game failed as a showcase of what the Geomod engine could do, but made up for it by just being a fun as hell, whereas each second game killed the series off for a time. 2 improved the environmental destruction that's characterized the series, but by focusing on consoles, it severely reduced what could actually be broken and hurt the fun. And Armageddon took everything that made the third game memorable and abandoned them in order to copy Dead Space. Then there's the third game itself in the series, Red Faction Guerilla, the remaster of which is what I'm going to take a look at for this video.
Daniel Mason, you are under arrest. Surrender or we will open fire.
Alex, run! Run!
I remember back in high school trying out the Xbox 360 version a few years after Guerilla came out, and I didn't think much of it at the time, but after giving THQ Nordic's Remastered Edition a go, I do now see it in a completely different light. But some of the flaws I saw back then are still very much there, like the story. Calling it lackluster is generous. While it gets the job done of giving context to everything, it's not well told or even engaging. We play as Alec Mason, a worker who's come to Mars in search of a new life, only for it to be destroyed when his brother is killed by the Earth Defense Force, and winds up serving in the reformed Red Faction Resistance. Mason as a protagonist isn't an interesting character at all, and while the cutscenes do try to develop him and his kind of love interest, they're so few and far between, it's impossible for what happens in them to be called anything other than just bare-boned character development. Hell, there's a plot point where the Red Faction command chain has been wiped out, and it's supposed to be this huge emotional moment, but since we only saw one commander, and even then we hardly saw the guy at all, it's as emotional as Admiral Holdo's sacrifice in The Last Jedi. More of an unfunny joke than something serious. But while Guerilla may be lacking in narrative substance, it does make up for it on the gameplay side of things. At first glance, Guerilla may look like a standard third-person shooter from around the time Gears of War was defining the genre, and you'd be forgiven for being wrong. See, Guerilla has always had a bit of a cult following thanks to one unique feature, the series' environmental destruction. Unlike the first 2 games where you could reshape the terrain, it was applied to the buildings, and the result was building destruction so stupidly over the top, it puts Battlefield's much-touted Levolution to shame. Take out the foundations of a building and it will collapse in on itself like a real building would. Or blow up the walls and you'll see debris fly gracefully through the air before causing additional property damage or injuring a civilian or two. Best of all, this wanton destruction never loses its edge, and the game has a great variety of weapons and upgrades to keep it fresh, from black hole bombs to a sniper rifle that disintegrates targets. Plus, you're encouraged to break stuff, since wrecking buildings is one of 2 ways to collect scrap, which you need in order to get upgrades and new weapons, as well as to reduce enemy influence to unlock story missions. However, outside of breaking stuff, gameplay is functional but very janky. Driving, for instance, can be a chore thanks to there only being 2 types of car handling, greased up and unwieldy, or slow and unwieldy, which will lead to many unintended accidents or guerrilla fighters seeing you knock a light post over and all of a sudden decide that's the signal to start the revolution. Then there's the enemy AI, which is just psychotically stupid to the point of suicide. EDF troops will constantly go out of their way to brutalize civilians in a way that, no joke, breaks immersion with how needlessly it happens, and their pursuit of the player can be so intense it's comical. No joke, the lengths the EDF troops will go to run you off the road is so intense at times it puts the Blues Brothers iconic chase scenes to shame just out of ludicrous hilarity. This ridiculousness gives the gameplay a charm that makes some of the game's more repetitive and frustrating moments feel less like a chore and more like something that can be enjoyed with how out of hand it can get. See, Guerilla was the next game its original developer Volition made after Saints Row 2, and the 2 do share some DNA, an open world and a need to do side activities in order to do story missions. But unlike Saints Row 2, there's less variety and charm to these activities, and some don't even contribute to progress for the next story mission. What's more is that while the jankiness of the gameplay can lead to some so bad it's good moments, it can also be a source of frustration and cause some game over situations that honestly turns what should ultimately be guerrilla warfare into something more like chimpanzee warfare. On top of that, the game's sandbox really lacks personality. It does have visual distinctions for different areas, but nothing about it ever pops with outlandish flair. If anything, the game's art direction serves as a timestamp for the transition period where brown and grey colour palettes dominated AAA games for a while. Now, outside of the game's single-player mode, there's also the Wrecking Crew and multiplayer modes, and oddly enough, these are possibly the best part of the game. Wrecking Crew is basically a demolition arcade mode with a great variety of modes in itself, where the objective is simple: take the equipment you're given, break shit, and try to get your score as high as possible. It's absolute fun in its simplicity and serves as a great proving ground to try out new weapons and toys for when you're in the single player. And as for the multiplayer, I won't lie, I wasn't able to play too much of it, but from what I could see, holy crap, it was amazing. From what I could tell, it only has standard modes like deathmatch, team deathmatch, capture the flag, etc. But once again, it's the series destruction physics that make it good. Each round is set up like a match of Unreal Tournament, with weapons and power-ups scattered around the map. The majority of these items are the ones with the most destructive potential, meaning that the possibility of destroying a building and having it collapse on another player is very real and can alter the layout of a map in such a way that Battlefield can only dream of. On top of this, there is a decent sized community to play with, thanks to the game's following and of course THQ Nordic restoring online functionality with the remaster, but the connectivity is hit or miss, hence why I didn't get to see much of it. Either way, if the main game doesn't do it for you, the multiplayer will win you over. But of course, I'm supposed to be talking about a remaster here, so let's bring up what's changed. Not a whole lot. Whatever updates the developer Kaiko gave to the game have been primarily to the visuals, and they didn't exactly touch up everything. The skybox and ground look better, and Alex's character model did get a spruce up, just not everywhere, and things like lighting, particle effects, and the draw distance were also improved. There's also support for modern HD display, and of course native 4K support, which is nice. It is a shame some of the problems with the gameplay weren't touched, but ultimately I would say that's a good thing. Since, as I said before, the jankiness does give the game an over-the-top charm, which contributes to its overall identity to set it apart from the rest of the pack. The PC version I played for this video does suffer from some stability issues, but thankfully it's nothing like the problems the PC version of Darksiders 2 suffered from at launch. But the game did crash on me once or twice while playing, and when I tried to stream it onto Mixer, the game suffered from graphical glitches and it would crash more frequently. But this didn't wreck the experience, and by the time this video is out, they'll be more than likely fixed with some patches. When it's all said and done, Red Faction Guerilla was a fun but deeply flawed game when it first came out. And this is still the case with the remastered edition. There is fun to be had, and the Geomod engine's destruction physics are still impressive by all standards. And in spite of its flaws, I would call this remaster a must-play for two types of people. Those who played it when it first came out and are nostalgic for blowing up a smokestack and watching it crumble on top of an EDF patrol, and younger people who may not have known this game existed until this remaster came out. But if you did play it first time round and didn't like it, then odds are you're still not going to like it now, but you might be pleasantly surprised if you give it a go. Hey, thanks for checking out the video, I really do appreciate it, and if you really enjoyed it, then feel free to like, favorite, and of course, hit the subscribe button. Now for movie reviews, I'm gonna have reviews of A Wrinkle in Time and Good Burger out as soon as I can, and for game reviews next month, I was planning to do a showcase at long last, but I'm having second thoughts, so what I'll review for next month is entirely up in the air in that field for now. But as usual, feel free to stick around for all the other stuff I got coming up in the pipeline.